Once upon a time, there was a kingdom known for its trade and business. Many merchants from different countries came here to do business and also settled in the kingdom. Sometimes they brought special and valuable gifts for the king. Once, a Persian merchant gifted a rare plant to the king. He was fascinated with the plant and its beautiful flowers. He ordered that it be planted right outside his bedroom window so that he might see its blooms and enjoy them. The gardener carried out the king's orders. The plant flourished, and the king was very pleased. Unfortunately, one day the gardener's goat came into the king's garden. It chewed up a lot of plants, and then, wandering around, it ate the king's favorite plant too. The next morning, the king looked out of his window, and there was no sign of his plant. He flew into a rage and asked the guard and others to inquire into it. When the king reached the court, the gardener was produced before him. The gardener was shuddering with fear.
"It was my goat that ate the plant, Your Majesty,"
admitted the poor gardener.
"I am so sorry."
But the king was not in a mood to forgive the gardener. The king, his face red with anger, exclaimed,
"Your goat ate my favorite plant. You are responsible for this loss and must face the consequences. I order that you be hanged for your carelessness."
The gardener's wife came running to the court when she heard of it and begged for mercy. She said,
"Your Majesty, my husband is innocent. He didn't harm your favorite plant. It was our goat that ate it by mistake. Please, I beg you, forgive my husband."
But the king refused to change his orders. In despair, she went to the minister, whose wisdom was widely known. He heard her story and gave her some advice, telling her to do exactly as he had said. The minister assured her that he would save her husband from the death penalty. The next day, there was a big crowd on the road outside the palace. A goat was tied to a post and was being thrashed by the gardener's wife with a stout stick. The goat bleated loudly, and the lady shouted at it. The noise reached the court, and the king asked a courtier to find out what the uproar was. Seeing the woman beating the goat, he took her to the king's court.
"This woman was beating a goat, Your Majesty,"
explained the courtier. The king wanted to know the reason. The woman said,
"I am the gardener's wife, Your Majesty. This wretched goat's action is causing my husband's death. It is responsible for making me a widow, and my children orphans. My husband is paying for the goat's mistake. The goat must pay for killing my husband.
The king realized he was wrong and pardoned the gardener. The gardener's family silently blessed the minister. Moreover, the king was all praise for the minister, who had once again proved his worth. Moral: rushing to judgment can lead to unfair outcomes. Taking time to understand the full situation prevents mistakes and promotes fairness and justice. Once there was a king who loved his grandson very much. He would spend hours playing with him. He talked about his grandson all the time, even in front of everyone on the court. The king proudly declared,
"My grandson is the most handsome child of all."
Everyone in the court agreed, because they did not dare to argue with the king. But the minister said,
"Your Majesty, the young prince is very good-looking indeed. But all parents find their children beautiful."
This angered the king. So, one of his courtiers suggested that each of them bring a child whom he thought to be the most beautiful. Then, they could judge who was the most beautiful child. The next day, each courtier brought a child with him. The king saw them all, but he insisted that his grandson was the most handsome child. Finally, he came to the minister, who had been silently standing and watching the scene all the while. The minister did not have any children with him. The king asked him why he had disobeyed. The minister said that, although he had seen the most beautiful child in the country, the child's mother did not let him bring it.
She did not want strangers to cast their eyes on her child,
added the minister.
"Then we will go in disguise and see the child ourselves,"
said the king. So the king and the minister, accompanied by a few ministers, traveled to the other end of the city. The minister took them to a small and dirty hut. A child was playing in the mud. His body was covered with dust and grime. The king and his courtiers were shocked when they saw the child. He was the ugliest child they had ever seen. The child had poxmarks all over his face. He was dirty and had a runny nose.
"You call this child beautiful? This is the ugliest child I have ever seen,"
said the king. The child's mother overheard him and got very angry.
How dare you call my child ugly? He is the most beautiful child God has given me. Go away. away from here at once,
she screamed. Anne picked up her baby. She wiped his face with a cloth, and she hugged and kissed him lovingly. She took her child inside, and then closed the door. There was a shocked silence, as the king and his courtiers realized what the minister had tried to show them. Finally, the king turned to the minister and said,
You were right. All parents find their children to be the most beautiful. The love for their children blinds them, so they do not see anything wrong with them.
Your Majesty. The same holds true for your grandparents too. Don't you think so?
teased the minister. Moral: love blinds us to imperfections,